doing the work while letting go of the burden of it. That's kind of the main message. How do you maintain hope when everything just seems to be getting worse? I knew that part was relevant. I was not expecting the rest of it to become so relevant. And I wish it wasn't.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to a Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. I know you have a choice as to which podcast to listen to, and there are so many about writing, so I'm honored that you're taking time out of your day to listen to me and my interviews. And if you like what you hear today, please consider subscribing over at YouTube. Follow me on Spotify and iHeartRadio and wherever you listen to podcasts. And leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you think of today's episode. And as usual, head over to artbyruth.com where you can sign up for my newsletter and receive a free downloadable copy of The Letter Opener. It's a suspense novella that I wrote. I think you'll like it. It's a great sample of my writing style. And also you can learn more about me and my upcoming book projects, like my Christmas novella, which is coming soon. And book 3 in my Love and Romance in Italy series, The Streets of Florence, released this week. And my book launch party is October 9th, tomorrow evening. So be sure and head over to my Facebook page, author Ruth Douthit, to learn more about that. Okay, let's get started. Heather Wood is with me today. She is an author and an editor who just happens to edit my books. I'm very grateful to her. She's an author who grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and she loves history, classic literature, writing stories. She's a homeschool mom, and in her spare time, she writes these amazing novels, and she's here to talk with me about her latest, Sowing Hope. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to Heather Wood talk about her new book. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day. I'm super excited to have my friend, my editor and author, Heather Wood with me today. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me, Ruth. I appreciate it. I love the chance to be able to talk with you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. Well, why don't you start off by telling my listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your book, Sowing Hope.
Sure. I am a accidental author, a homeschool mom in Virginia. I have my bachelor's in arts in Bible theology. I intended to go to the mission field. And then when I met my husband, got redirected towards just choosing to serve the Lord here in the States. Like I said, I live in Virginia. I have 4 children. My oldest is a new teenager and my youngest is 7. So it's just at a really fun age where I'm still kind of the center of their world and get to spend a lot of my days reading to them. And then I fit in writing in the margins. I started writing just to write down a story that would not get out of my head. I'd kind of lived in my head for a couple of decades. And then next thing you know, here I am, having just published my 6th book. It was around my 3rd book when I realized that this was not a passing phase, but something that God had really been creating me to do my whole life, and all my experiences and education and everything have been working towards this moment. So that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. So, wow, homeschooling 4 children. What made you and your husband decide to go in that direction?
Well, we were both homeschooled ourselves, so it's pretty normal to us. It wasn't such a leap for me to consider it because it was the lifestyle that I was already familiar with. And we just knew that we wanted to be able to spend as much time with our kids as we could.
Yeah, that's important. Well, so you have lessons you have to do, teaching, and then grading, and then organizing. What part of your day do you write? Are you a morning person or a nighttime writer?
Most of my writing happens in the evening, and it's usually actually done around my editing after the kids are down. Sometimes I start as early as right after supper and, try to spend a couple hours on my editing and then work on my own writing. I do, depending on where I am and how deep I am in the story, I'll fit it in more places, like in the afternoon while the kids are doing some of their independent work or while they're at piano lessons. But if I'm at a place that takes more concentration and like a part of the story that takes more concentration, then I pretty much have to do it when they're all down.
Yeah, I admire that so much. I have interviewed other authors who are homeschool moms, and same thing. They have to try and sneak it in where they can, but usually when the house is quiet.
Yeah, it de definitely depends on where I am in the story or how intense the scene is that I'm writing at the time.
Yeah. Did you always, think you were going to be an author since
No,
you were a child or?
yeah, this is two different things. I always liked writing stories when I was growing up. I did not always think I could be an author. For
Mm,
some reason, when I looked at my favorite books and I looked at myself, I just had to disconnect. Like that is something I could never do. I liked telling stories, but somehow it did not translate to like, therefore, take classes and get better at it. Instead, I was like, oh no, I'll never be good enough. And I just let it go. And that is something that I regret now. So don't be like me. If God has given you a passion for something, go after it and do what you can to learn to be better. But I think I was just so in awe of my favorite authors and just feeling like I could never measure up to that, that I let go of the even idea of possibly being an author myself. And I think eventually when I did start to write, it took recognizing that I write different from my favorite authors, and that does not mean that I necessarily write worse.
mm,
It's just they have a different voice than mine, and just because I look at their books and be like, I can't write like that, doesn't mean that I can't write well.
mm. That's a good point. I think a lot of authors need to realize that just because you write in a different voice, a different style, doesn't mean you're not at that level. You're just different. You're unique. You're you.
Yeah, and thankfully now that I've realized that this is something that I want to do more seriously, I have been, furthering my education and taking classes and working at the craft and getting better. So,
Mm.
um, thankfully I'm not at that place that I was back then. But that's why I never dreamed that one day I would be published. It was never in my plans.
Do any of your children show an interest in writing?
They do actually. I have a couple who are working on stories. My daughter is writing a story about a bunny who witnesses the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection, and she wants to market it or put it on library shelves so that children will think it's just a story about a bunny and then pick it up and read about Jesus. So
Oh, look at
that's her
her.
plan.
That's cute. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, my son tries and writes stories here and there. He has since he was a child. And I think a lot of kids, a lot of people, when it starts to get difficult, they put it down, but I keep urging him and telling him because he has great ideas. I say, you just need to stay with it. It's not
Yeah,
easy. If it
absolutely.
was easy, everybody would be doing it, right?
Right. But when when you get to that moment where you realize, like, oh, wait, this is what God created me to do, this is a
Mm.
way that I can reflect Him and show His character, then it's hard to quit then.
Well, let's talk about your newest book, Sowing Hope. Tell us about this story and where your inspiration came from.
Yeah, this is actually probably out of the six books I have published. This is really the story of my heart, and that the history inspiring Sowing Hope has been special to me for a large portion of my life. And it's very unknown nowadays. So when I realized that I could be the person to tell this story, I just got very excited about it. Sowing Hope shares the true stories of abolitionist editors in the 1830s who were speaking out against slavery and actually fighting for a free press at the same time because they were being actively suppressed and attacked for their viewpoints. And I guess it was early enough in the nation's history that all of these things about the freedom of speech hadn't necessarily been worked out as to what does this actually look like in real life? How does this play out in our um, community and in our culture? So they were really fighting for the right to even publish their viewpoints in a culture that was wildly opposed to their stirring the pot.
Mm.
Even when they were attacked, they were the ones blamed for it because they were the ones who were upsetting the status quo. So particularly, I tell the story of Elijah Lovejoy, who was a Presbyterian minister and newspaper editor in St. Louis, who was attacked enough times that out of concern for his family's safety, he moved across the river to a free state, to Alton, Illinois, and eventually he became the first white man who was martyred for the cause of abolition in 1837. Although Sowing Hope also tells there's other characters along the way that are real people too, whose stories are included. But the main character is a fictional character. It is a Christian romance, but um, the history it tells is about these abolitionist editors and also the Underground Railroad and all of those things, a full generation before the Civil War.
Wow. I love this part of your back blurb of the book. Violent mobs, hateful rhetoric, and spineless politicians create a tinderbox of danger. Now, when you wrote that, you probably had no idea how contemporary and appropriate that would be for today, right?
Oh, I had no idea, and I still wish I didn't. It's devastating to see the same thing happening again in our day and age. I had no idea when I was writing this book or publishing it. I knew the messages were relevant about
Mhm.
continuing to do the work that God has called us to do when it seems like everything is just getting worse and worse and worse. And so doing the work while letting go of the burden of it, that's kind of the main message. How do you maintain hope when everything just seems to be getting worse? I knew that part was relevant. I was not expecting the rest of it to become so relevant, and I wish it wasn't, to be
Yeah, it's
honest.
so tragic because then you ask a question, what will he sacrifice for the cause he's devoted his life to? And when I read that, I immediately thought of Charlie Kirk and others who have put it all out there, you know?
Yeah, I got my proof copy of this book the day after Charlie Kirk was shot, and
Oh,
I was just holding it in my hands, being like, "What do I do now?" This is
yeah. No, it's an
crazy.
important book. I'm glad you published it because it's important for people to see the history of this. Like you said, we say freedom of speech, freedom of the press, but do we fully understand why, our founding fathers put that in there, those rights in there, those protections in there? I mean, we kind of just use it as a punchline or just, rhetoric, but do we really fully understand? And so I think your book is very important. It's a topic that not just students should know, but adults should revisit.
I agree. And I think those two things happening at the same time, the release of this book with Charlie Kirk's assassination happening back to back, really opened my eyes to the fact that the freedom of speech is something that we need to fight for and defend in every generation, that it's not guaranteed um, for further generations. And each of us has a responsibility to work to defend it.
That's true. If we don't, it's easy to lose it, isn't it?
Way too easy, apparently.
Now, this is a true story of an abolitionist editor. So tell us a little bit more about that and why you wanted that to be the focus of your story.
Yeah, well, I think when I realized that very few people nowadays know about Elijah Lovejoy, that his story has been largely forgotten, became very excited to find out that like I could be the person to bring his name back into the public eye. There are no other novels written that include his story. I have done searches in general market and Christian market and everything, and nobody else has in a fiction book told his story, which there are nonfiction books, but I think there is a certain kind of audience that will only pick up a fiction book. So even though his story in the book is completely true, I mean, it's basically a nonfiction, um, it is it's going to be more accessible, I think, for a
Hmm.
lot of readers to find out about him for the first time. So my dad was the first person who introduced me to Elijah Lovejoy, and I was raised in Illinois, so this is Illinois history. So I'm not sure exactly where along the way he found out about him, but I know my dad was very inspired by him, and he took us to the Alton, Illinois, to see the memorial to Elijah Lovejoy when I was a teenager. And I have scrapbook pages of all these photographs. I took pictures of every angle of his monument because every side had quotes on it that were just so inspiring. He was so fearless, so confident in being right and in doing right and in his trust in God, that God knew best and that God would protect him. And if not, his life was in God's hands. Just absolutely confident. Um, and I think, all of us wish we could live so fearlessly and so confidently. So I've been inspired by him for a very long time.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
and then,
amazing.
yeah, and then I tell a story in the back of the book. When my dad passed away in 2008, he died suddenly. He was an electrical contractor and he'd been working. He always worked in people's houses and businesses. He owned his own business. And when he passed away, he had been working in the home of a writer for the Chicago Tribune. And that writer actually wrote an op-ed about my dad after he passed away, and it was published in the Chicago Tribune, just talking about the simple um, influence that my dad had made in his home, just in the weeks that he was there doing electrical work. And in this article, the man says that my dad told him the story of Elijah Lovejoy. So it's just so special to my family, so special to me. And I
Yeah.
hope that this story continues to go on to inspire more people. Because honestly, to me, this is really God's story, because this is a man that he used. He was the one who did the work. He eventually, God is the one eventually who moved to um, where we could finally outlaw slavery. So it's truly his story, and I think that's part of why it's so important. Elijah Lovejoy was just one of the tools that he used.
Wow, that's powerful. And he was a man of God who stepped forward. It takes those brave souls to step forward and say, this must stop. You know, they risked
Yeah.
their lives. Yeah. Well, tell us about Patrick Gallagher, your character in your story, Sowing Hope.
Yeah, sure. So Patrick was the first character that I have created particularly because I wanted somebody who could interact with the history I wanted to tell. So I knew I wanted to write an Elijah Lovejoy book. I needed to come up with somebody who could interact with him. So I made Patrick a newspaper reporter back in Baltimore. He's a minor character in the first book in this series, Weaving Roots. Weaving Roots is about Patrick's older brother, and I made his younger brother. Um, Work in the newspaper so that I could then move on, move into telling his story and sowing hope. So the two books really don't overlap very much at all. You don't need to have read the first one because in Sowing Hope, Patrick actually leaves home.
Mm,
He decides to walk across the country. He wants to see the situation of slavery and free Black communities and abolitionism across the country, and he wants to go meet his hero, Elijah Lovejoy, who is at that time in St. Louis. So, because of that, he doesn't really interact a lot with the setting of Weaving Roots at all. He's kind of on his own journey. So, he is at this time, it's 9 years after Weaving Roots. So he is 34 years old. He's been working with freedmen's societies and the Underground Railroad in his hometown of Baltimore for many years. And he's just despairing, just discouraged after all these years of working towards change and things just are not changing. And he really feels like his hope is just about gone. And this is like his last final hope is to go join up with Elijah Lovejoy and just try to regain some of that passion that once directed his choices. So that's where he is. He's very at a low place at the beginning of Sowing Hope, and we get to go on this journey with him.
Hmm. Wonderful. Well, that's how a lot of us get, when you're wanting change, you're striving for it, but it's not happening. It can be very disheartening. So I like that he's very real, and I think readers can relate to him.
Yes, and I think also we tend to attach results to the
Mm,
value of our work.
that's
And
true.
sometimes God has just called us just to do the work, and maybe we don't see the results in our lifetime.
That's true. And especially in America, we're very results driven.
Right. So I think there's a lot of really important, relevant messages in this book. But he does meet a beautiful woman along the
I was
way.
going to say, tell us
Yeah,
about Anna,
he
Anna
gets his
Markland.
happily ever after. Yeah, Anna Markland's a bit of surprise. He was not expecting her. And she is an inn owner in Ohio. She also runs a underground railroad stop, and she is a widow. Um, Her husband died, a few years ago, and she's running her inn. She has chronic sickness, so she feels very constrained in what she's able to do and how much she's able to help. And so when Patrick comes along, he's just like this passionate man who's, heading from one city to another city. He's going to change the world. And she's just thinks, I'm the last person who would be a good fit for him because I would stifle him. I would slow him down, with my sickness. I couldn't, attach that to him. He would just spend all of his days sweeping floors, if he was with me. He wouldn't be able to go out and do the big things that God has made him to do. So they have an interesting journey together.
I like that. So a little bit of romance with all of this striving for change. A little bit of politics too, right?
Yep, and a little bit of humor. I always like to have a little bit of something to put a smile on your face. So you get a little bit of everything. And I never want to see the point of writing is to lift up the reader, to encourage the reader, to challenge the reader. It's never to drag the reader down.
Mm.
So even though the history might be difficult, I always try to be very careful to not just wallow in it, um, but to tell it in a way that you can enjoy hearing the story along the way too.
That's true. It's a very heavy topic, a very dark time in American history, but you provide hope and light for the reader.
Right, because in the end of the day, that's the point is to edify.
Yeah, I mean, you want to entertain, but you're right. We Christian authors should put light and joy into our stories. It may not always be a happy ever after ending, but there should be some light and themes of restoration and reconciliation and such. So that's important. I think that's great that you did that.
I do have so Sowing Hope ends in 1838, where things are still as bad as they ever were, although, now he has a partner to continue through life in. He has a new perspective, he has a new fire for the fight. But I did write a bonus epilogue that there's a QR code at the end of the book on both the ebook and the paperback. And in the bonus epilogue, that's where you get to see Patrick as a older man the day that the slaves are freed.
Mm.
And I did want to give readers like that moment when he gets to see all the work that he's worked towards all his life come to fruition.
Oh, what a great idea. Well, Sowing Hope is out in the world right now, and so folks can pick it up on Amazon and anywhere else.
Yeah, I have it on Walmart.com and Barnes and Noble, and then also it's on my website, heatherwoodauthor.com, if you want a signed copy. But Amazon's probably going to be your cheapest and quickest way to get it.
Oh,
And it
great.
also is on, Kindle and Kindle Unlimited that way.
Sure. Well, what's coming next for you?
Theoretically, I'm going to write the third book in the series. I've started researching. I wrote the first couple of paragraphs, but I do feel like I do have some more reading and researching to do before I can really dive into the next story. It's going to be more closely tied with Weaving Roots, and then it's about the father of the family in my other series, the Finding Home series. So he's so far been a minor character in these books. But you'll
eventually I will be writing his story. I just need to wrap my mind around it first.
Sure. Okay, great. We can look forward to that. So folks, head over to Heather Wood Authored at...
It's just heatherwoodauthor.com, but it
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
heatherwoodauthor.com, where you can look at her shop. You can connect with her on Instagram, Facebook. She has a blog there, so you can read more about her. And definitely check out Sowing Hope, that QR code, so that you can get that epilogue. That sounds amazing. And I know readers are going to love that. Well, Heather, I know you're super busy with being a mom and a homeschool mom, so I appreciate you taking time to chat with us today about your new book.
I'm so honored to spend the time with you, and I really appreciate you and your books and the work that you do. So thank you so much for having me.
That book sounds amazing. Sowing Hope by Heather Wood. I'll go get your copy today. I love history, and I know that's a dark time in American history, but I had no idea the story about Elijah Lovejoy. So that sounds amazing. There were so many hopeful stories like that came out of that time period. So check out heatherwoodauthor.com, where you can shop around, see what other books she has available there on her website, and subscribe for her newsletter so you can know about book 3 that's coming soon. And I hope that you've been encouraged by Heather and her story of how she perseveres. Even though she's a homeschool mom and an editor, she still makes time to write because she feels it's God's calling for her life. So if you have that calling, you need to make time too. And I know you can, because like I always say, someone out there needs to read your story of hope and light in this dark world. And until next time, thanks for listening. God bless.